All right, let's talk about adulthood because we are three young lads. I think we're
We
all the
are.
same age. We graduated the same year. We
Yeah, we
graduated from
did.
high school in the year 2017, and that puts us at the age right now. I don't know. I don't know how old I am anymore. 22.
Yep.
Yes, and I think we're all at least 21.
We're all 22, I'm pretty sure.
We're all 22, and so we are
I'm 21.
young in the
What?
realm
Uh,
of, I don't know, contemporary thought in terms of we are just now starting to break into kind of having a widespread acceptance in terms of our age and wisdom, uh, but also still being really stupid young 20-year-olds. And so, what do you guys think so far about adulthood and how it's viewed in our generation as we grow up with our peers and cohorts in college? And also, how do you feel your relationship has changed with older generations and younger generations as we grow?
Well, I want to start by saying that as a college student and, living in a college town, still close to my parents, things like that, just because I didn't move for college, don't feel like I've really left the nest yet, as I can hopefully expect to do when I get a big boy job at some point. Um, so my transition to adulthood really is, kind of feels like it's dragging its feet until I no longer live in the same town as my parents, at least. Even though I'm living on my own, things like that, like still being on my parents' insurance, what have you. It doesn't feel like a complete transition. Like you said, we're still young. We're still kind of in that transitional phase. But I will say that where it is different is being able to enjoy like the privileges that come with adulthood, feeling like you're looked up to more, or rather just not looked down upon as being a minor. That's nice. Yeah, so I'd say right now I'm kind of in this honeymoon phase of adulthood where I can enjoy all these privileges and attitudes about it, even though I've got a pretty sturdy safety net being where I am now. That doesn't feel like I've really accepted the responsibility of being an adult.
I guess from my perspective, of course, it's different being in New York slightly, and especially now, like I'm taking a gap year, so I've been working the past year and sort of living in an apartment, and just pretty much being a proxy like diet adult essentially, just in the sense that like I know I'll go back to school next year, but in that way it's been interesting. I mean, especially of course doing that all in a pandemic, and like I guess feeling like a heightened sort of like collective responsibility in that way. Like, of course, I'm not like taking care of like kids or like a dog in my apartment, but just like of precautions you have to take, especially in New York City, of not just when you leave, but when you get home, of trying to maintain like safe standards and stuff. Especially when you have roommates. Like, I guess in that way, it's been interesting to feel like sort of like proxy responsibility that like adults or parents might face in more formalized ways. Um, I'm interested when Trevor brought up the idea of like not being or look being looked up to, or at least not being looked down to. It's such a shame that like that is like a very natural feeling to feel that like by virtue of your age, like there's, I mean, and of course it's like generational too, with like boomers who are like, oh, those darn Gen Zers or millennials like don't get it kind of thing.
Right.
And of course, like that probably has happened in prior generations too, but it's just like so, because realistically, like adulthood and generations and all of the phases are in so many ways arbitrary. I mean, other than of course like actual material like brain development and like
Right.
things like important things like consent and stuff like that, and like when you can drink, but like more just like social cues and like the way we view other people as human beings, like how they're based on such just like everything else, like socially constructed, like notions of what it means to be like a high schooler or a college student or an adult, whatever an adult means, because it's like, I mean, what is an adult? Like, does it mean to be like just out of a nest? Does it mean to like have heightened responsibilities? Does it just mean to not be around like other caregivers? Um, like, it's, I think it's just worth, of course, like we're about to run out of Zoom time here, but I guess we'll still be talking. But I think it's worth maybe digging into what it actually means to be an adult and why it even matters, what sort of import and importance we assign to it, at least in a sort of like Western American society.
Right. Yeah, one of the things that's always bothered me, like, is like adulting, like adult as a verb.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I just paid my first bill. Hashtag adulting. Oh, like,
Right.
okay, here I'm jumping on the boomer train as the 21-year-old, but like, I think one of the most interesting things is the denial of real problems for anyone who isn't dealing with what is thought to be real problems, which
Yes.
it's current discourse that real problems is like taxes and
Right.
bills and health insurance. Like those are real problems, but like mental health for, a sixth grader is not a real problem because they don't have a real world.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I guess like I don't feel like in this time period that I'm transitioning into a different, more real world. I feel like I'm actually conversely shifting away from a real world where my childhood was. I feel like I've been shifting away as I'm getting older from a real world that I lived in as a child into a more fake and arbitrary world as I'm being shown these like problems that we've been looking forward to having becoming an adult this whole time.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's such an excellent way of looking at it because especially like as you start to like grow up and mature, you either sort of continue like seeing so many normal segments or features of society as just inherently normal or like just how things are, or you get skeptical. If you're skeptical and as you said the word arbitrary and you see things as being arbitrary or just like no one said things had to be this way, like no one said like people have to be like constantly bogged down by things like student loans or like unequal tax systems or whatever, then it's like if this like what does it mean for this to be the real world, like, and who's defining the real world if not just like it just seems like a total dogma to like inhibit you from wondering what a better real world could be,
There it is. First plug.
Oh yeah, ding ding ding
Better
ding
world.
ding ding ding. We need like a bell like every time I just go back to plugging it.
Right.
But I mean it's true. Like it's
Just sent you guys the invite. There we go.
all right, great.
It's a very similar difference to something that came to my attention working at the camp, where we lived as a close society of human beings with a common goal of caring for children over a summer at camp, a 3-month period of time where we are there to escort kids through an experience grounded in a spiritual connectedness together. And the sense that these young adults got, the staff members, moving through this 3-month period together, was that they, in fact, were not doing anything real that whole entire time. And when they left camp to go back to their depression, their anxiety, and all the bullshit that they had to deal with in quote-unquote real life, a lot of the sentiment that I got from my friends and family that I lived with for 3 months was basically, what we're doing here is just a play and it's fake. And when I go back to hating my life, that's what's real. I don't think I added anything.
But that is a perfect little like analogy. I mean, it's just like pain is real, like the struggle is real. Any escape from that, any sort of sense that like you don't have to constantly be like anxious about things is like a potentially a temporary escape or something that like like that's it's time out, it's playtime. It's and which is so funny considering how like embedded like notions of like heaven or like salvation are. I guess it does make sense because that's like the final destination. You don't get there until like things are finally over, until you can, until anxiety is done. But it's like, no, you can't have that here. There's no such thing as heaven on earth. There's no sense of a mutual, like a constant thrust of mutual aid and mutual support, because that's
Right.
not how things are.
Well, I mean, that's just like one of the huge downfalls of like modern Christianity as a spiritual religious movement in the world is
of course
the advent of heaven and hell. But that's a whole thing that we can get into. I'm going to turn on a lamp here before it gets too dark.
Oh yeah,
we
I'm
can't
so
even
glad.
see you. So.
Yeah.